It was just about 2 weeks ago or so that we celebrated the 200 Traveler special, but here we are at 300 Travelers. That is completely insane. Thanks to all of you out there who have been listening to these videos. Hopefully you find them interesting and more importantly you find them helpful. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and today what I want to do is to share with you guys a few more details about our game's single player campaign. So I want to talk a little bit about the motivation of the single player campaign. I want to talk about whether it's going to be necessary to play, given that there's also a multiplayer aspect to our game. And I also want to talk about whether there is a dependency between the two, if one affects the other, and so on. If you haven't checked out the video where I introduce our game, I'll link it down below so you can get an idea. But the quick version of it is an diesel punk post-apocalyptic airship-based game where you control large airships and do exploration and combat and so on with them. So in the multiplayer aspect of the game, you can fight against other players in teams, and even though that's the main motivation of the game, why did I find it necessary to add a single player campaign to that? Let's talk about that first. My name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for over 13 years, and in my experience, I have seen a lot of games that come from the old, I suppose, Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, that sort of culture, where there used to be a single player campaign and then most people would spend most of their time in multiplayer, in teams, fighting against each other. So over time, this type of game evolved to a form where, because the multiplayer was so fun and so popular, some games, even outside of that IP, started launching with just multiplayer to offer. And the typical structure in multiplayer was that there is no premise, there is no story or explanation. There is just the bare minimum of the explanation about how you move and how you shoot or use your abilities, and briefly, very briefly, what the goal of the match is, and off you go. Go fight against other players and have fun. Now, people who came from the games that introduced the story and the premise and the mechanics had no problem with this. They knew exactly what to do, they knew exactly how everything works, what to expect from the game, and so they were ready to have fun. New players, unless they had somebody to show them the ropes, so to speak, they had no way of knowing what to do. So they would hear from someone or a review on the internet or something that this game is pretty fun, they would want to try it, and they would very quickly come to the realization that if you don't really understand the game's mechanics, then it's very, very hard to achieve basically anything in the game. Yes, you could spend a lot of time and learn through trial and error, but most people seem to not want to lose 1,000 times before they get to have some victories or they get that sense of progress in the game. So somehow we are in this state today where many games get released with just multiplayer, expecting that players either know everything already, or they have friends who can introduce them to the game and teach them the mechanics, or simply that people will stick with the game long enough to learn all the mechanics through trial and error, and that's how they will be able to move further into the game. There's nothing wrong with that if there's somebody who enjoys that. I know there is a huge crowd out there that likes this sort of experience. Personally, I do like games that have deep multiplayer mechanics and they make you think about all the positioning and what abilities to use and what weapons to use and what's good against what and all that. I love this kind of mechanics. But when I try to play games that simply have just a multiplayer with no explanation, no in-depth tutorial, nothing to really tell you what the game is all about, what's important and so on, what you should use against what, I just find myself lost. And yes, I do make progress from one match to the other, but somehow it's not fun enough for me to keep going through the game while losing. Especially there is this moment that if I get killed by someone in that match and I don't know what happened, that is hugely demotivating for me. I don't know what you think when you are in a similar situation. I'd love to know, but For me, if I'm just looking around trying to figure out where everybody is, what's going on in the game, um, I just die from some sniper somewhere or from some bomb ability that I had no way of knowing about, then I think, well, this could happen anytime. Nobody explained to me what happened now. Nobody told me you died because so and so. Next time, be careful about so and so. If that's not there, I feel like I could spend 100 games and gain no glimpse as to why this happened. So there I am in that situation where I enjoy this type of game, but I feel that I'm not making any progress and I have no hope of victory without really understanding the basic mechanics of the game. So looking at other games that feature both, I find that that is a really, really good balance, because single player and multiplayer games have this difference in pace, right? In single player, you want to relax, enjoy, immerse yourself, have that feeling. While in multiplayer, it's typically more high paced, more social. It's a high action environment, especially if it's a battle based game, adrenaline, run around, shoot things, and so on. So there's this difference in theme between the two. And I thought, well, for my game, I would like to have all these big airships form groups and fight against each other and have this like very interesting tactical sort of combat. But to have that, you need to have strengths and weaknesses for everything. And if you don't know what these strengths and weaknesses are, it's very difficult to effectively form a strategy and a hypothesis to then go out and try it and say, okay, I thought that this weapon would work against that armor, but it didn't work. So it seems it didn't work because that armor had so-and-so special property. If you don't understand that in your trial, then you don't have really a way forward, in my experience. It's very difficult to think about what to do next. So the motivation for me was this. If there is a single player campaign, in fact, if there's a bespoke single player campaign for each airship in our game, I thought that that would be enough time and it would be a comfortable enough environment for someone to start the game, see how the airship moves, get a feeling about what to expect from the airship, the size, the weight, and so on. And then, because each airship is slightly different or quite different from the other, then that is the space where someone can get exposed to these things and try them in multiple situations. And this is a little different from a tutorial. So in a tutorial, you have very clearly defined steps, right? And it's not like we're not going to have them, but I want something different. I don't want a tutorial where you just go through the gauntlet once, the game says, okay, now you know everything you should know, go off and conquer everything. I want something a bit more constant. I want something that's there with you as you're playing the game throughout the game, not just for the first few moments. So I can't share too much about it right now, but I want a system that's constantly there, present for you, that you can ask questions or get more information about things as you go into the game. So that is more suited to a single player experience where you can ask and re-ask and re-practice the same things over and over, as long as you want, of course, as long as that is the question you want to ask. So moving on to the next question, will the single player campaign be necessary before you get to try out the multiplayer? So this one is an easy no, it's not going to be necessary. You can jump straight into the multiplayer if you feel that you have enough experience, or you know what to expect, or simply if you just want to enjoy the pleasure of finding out about these things, in action as you're in the thick of battle, rather than a more relaxed experience where you can slowly find out about everything. If that's your style of playing, that is completely fine, and I deeply respect that. So there's no requirement to finish the single player campaign before you can use that ship in multiplayer. So that brings us to the next question. What is the interaction or relationship between single player and multiplayer? Do you do you carry over the same ship? What happens to all your XP and so on? And this is a good question, and there's still a few things we're trying out, but what I can say right now is, as a general concept, since it's possible to just jump into the multiplayer right away without completing the single player campaign, then it wouldn't make sense to carry over any power and so on from the single player campaign. Also, there is considerations of cheating. You know, what if somebody spends 1,000,000 hours in single player and creates this super powerful whatever? There's stuff like that. At the same time, I feel like I want to do something to reward this exploration side of the game for the players. So not necessarily carry over power or XP or ammo or anything like that, but more in the direction of little cute unlockables, or several new options that the player can have if they put the extra time in the single player campaign and they complete some objectives. I think that's fun. It's fun for me when I experienced it in other games that I played, and yes, it's something that is additional, and if someone hasn't done that little task in the campaign, they might not have access to that thing, but it's certainly not going to be a necessary game-breaking thing. Like, it's not something you must have, otherwise you have no hope. It's just a nice little extra to explore if you've put the effort in unlocking it and exploring that side of things. But it's not going to be by any means necessary. So that's it for the little campaign reveal and background. If you have any questions about the game, please let me know. I will answer whatever I can at the moment. Thank you again so much, returning travelers, for being here and for sharing my thoughts. I look forward to hearing your thoughts as well. And as always, have fun.